so fun. Yeah, it was like, all right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope we all had a chance to nourish, and I think we are checking off the boxes for the nature prescription. We have music, right? We have social connection, hitting all the social prescriptions here today. So excited to have this afternoon session and to speak with this really wonderful collection of people who are doing great work in research and practice. And so my name is Kelsey Stratton, and I'll be moderating this panel. And I will start by just very briefly introducing the people on the panel, and then giving everyone a couple of minutes to highlight their work, whether that's a research or a practice, and their interests in this field. And then we'll go into some questions and have some discussion. So first, we'll start at the end here first. Robert Marins, who is a research professor emeritus at U of M's Institute for Social Research and professor emeritus of architecture and urban planning in the Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning. We have Kate Schertz. Kate is a postdoctoral research fellow in the psychology department at U of M, working in the emotion and self-control lab. Jason Duvall, who is a lecturer in the program in the environment at the University of Michigan. Joe Trumpy is an associate professor of art at the Stamp School of Art and Design and an associate professor of natural resources at the School for Environment and Sustainability at U of M. We have Callie England, who is a licensed clinical social worker and adventure therapist and university instructor who teaches adventure therapy at U of M School of Social Work. And Lee Smith Bravender, a nature play advocate at the Mathai Botanical Gardens and Nichols Arboretum. So really delighted to have this group of colleagues here to talk about their really interesting work. And so Lee, if you would like to start, just a little bit of your background and interests and your work in this field.
Hello, y'all. Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me to this really interesting conversation. So I want to extend my appreciation and thanks to Sam and Katie and the entire Nature RX team. My name is Lee Smith Bravender. I'm an informal educator, a horticulturalist, and a garden designer for childhood outdoor play at Mathai Botanical Gardens and Nichols Arboretum. I work with many colleagues there who are creating opportunities for both nature connection and science identity and wellness across our organization. And I focus on early childhood engagement. My job title is Nature Play Coordinator, so that's pretty awesome, right? And I manage the Gaffield Children's Garden there. The Gaffield Children's Garden is based on philosophical principles of what might frequently be called nature play. So it is a large outdoor space that is highly permissioned for play. And, combined with our professional experience there and also knowing the interdisciplinary research, all the things that we've been talking about. Childhood outdoor play is essential, holistic, healthy human development, pathway to pro-earth behaviors, and a place that I like to emphasize, a powerful place for deep, self-directed learning. And it's a marvelous, joyful place to be. We are also doing, at Mathai Nichols, I feel really fortunate to have found a home there. We are really interested in not just our places and our spaces, but building relationship with communities, with practitioners in their own spaces to help grow the practices of all the benefits of nature access and all of the benefits of play.
Kelly.
So I'm here wearing kind of three professional hats. So in my private practice as an adventure therapist, I don't have an office. So you don't come sit on my couch. We meet in some sort of outdoor space and do something. Frequently in Michigan, that's hiking, walking, and talking. In the hot summer days, it's taking off shoes and socks and getting in Fleming Creek and splashing around, maybe throwing some rocks. In the winter, maybe it's cathartic snowball throwing. In deep COVID, everyone was doing fire building. So all my clients can build a fire now and then burn some leaves that represent their tough stuff. So adventure therapy it's normal psychotherapy, like we're doing all of the things that you do in a typical therapy office, but we're just doing it outdoors while we're engaging our bodies, minds, and spirits. Another hat is teaching that at the School of Social Work. So my class is literally called Adventure and Experience-Based Therapy. And I teach my classes in an experiential education way. So hey, guess what? My classes go outside. We're frequently out at the Adventure Center or in the ARB. So you might see me with a group of grad students this summer out doing fun things in the ARB. And then my third hat is with Adventure Leadership. So I supervise MSW field placement students in learning how to do all of those things. And then also fight the good fight, trying to form partnerships between Adventure Leadership and people like you. So hit us up. You need a beautiful place to facilitate nature-based things? We got you. You need facilitators to facilitate nature-based things? We got you. So we would love to connect and build more collaborations.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. My role has changed over the last 30 years or so. I am a science illustrator by training, which requires really acute attention to details and paying attention to nature in a really intense way. So early on in my teaching career here, I discovered that students didn't have those kinds of relationships. I was lucky as a kid that I was an avid Boy Scout in the shadow of the first Earth Day, so spent a lot of time outside, and that really formed my environmentalism. So I built programs that took students outside and intentionally worked on building relationships with nature. Over time, those programs went away, other programs came in. Part of my creative practice is that of a designer builder using natural materials. So place really matters. We spend upwards of almost 95% of our time in built spaces. And how do we, and that's partly because of design, it's comfortable. How do we make it comfortable to be outside? How do we create a built space that encourages us to be in nature or with nature or using natural materials that make you thoughtful of nature? So if you can't grow it, you've got to mine it, and if you mine it, you likely have to refine it. So thinking about place is always present in that kind of design work. Another thing that I do on campus is I direct a living learning community called the Michigan Sustainability Community. So again, it's designed for first year undergrads, trying to get them to build a healthy practice in a required seminar, getting them to pay attention, asking questions about, understanding what their watershed is, where their water's coming from, where does their garbage go. We do exercises like they have to carry their garbage with them for a month and think about how do those materials enter my life? Where do they go? What does it impact? They do interesting things like they have to find a tree partner on campus and spend committed time with that partner and reflect on their relationship, which is a pretty simple thing, but it's been incredibly impactful. I've done that for about 15 years, and I've had students come back and they'll anxiously come and talk to me and say, like, hey, Trumpy, I'm back, and like, cool, I saw somebody I knew, and it's like, cool, who did you know? And it's like, my oak tree. I went and visited my oak tree. So taking purposed walks is part of that, and learning to see. So starting to ask questions. Once they understand an oak tree, they can ask other things. Once they understand what a robin is, they know that they didn't see a robin, they saw other things. We're visual animals, and being able to engage in that kind of a way is really beneficial. So that's some of my scope.
Hi, everybody. My primary role at the university now is a lecturer, so teaching is taking up most of my time. One of the courses that I teach is a freshman seminar called Prescription Nature, where we really dive into the scientific theories and evidence behind nature contact and why it benefits people, which is during the winter term, which is absolutely fantastic. I love it. We get to force them to go outside in winter, which they all don't like at first, and then they realize that they kind of appreciate. But in my little free time that I have left, I've also gotten involved in some research. Some of that has involved thinking about how people experience nature, whether or not certain ways that they engage in nature can help them get more out of that experience. And maybe there are also ways that we engage with the natural world that interfere with our ability to get benefits. Some of you might know what some of those things might be, using your phones a lot. And I've also done some work on group-based multi-day nature experiences to benefit veterans communities, and some work looking at the benefits of therapeutic gardens in prison environments. So a range of things. I'll stop there. I will talk more.
Hi. So my research on campus is looking at the psychological mechanisms through which our surrounding physical environments influence us. So this is trying to figure out why nature has the benefits that it has, what exactly those benefits are, when they work, who do they work for, and things like that. I think this research is important so that I think everyone in this room has probably bought into the idea that spending time in nature is beneficial to them. But if we know the mechanisms through which this works, we can design better interventions, we can create better built spaces that have the features that create these restorative environments, and we can ensure more equitable access to these environments. So, for example, one of my studies is looking at the features of parks that make that park visit a more restorative and beneficial park visit. And I'm doing this work in the city of Chicago, where we're then mapping who lives in neighborhoods that has these restorative parks, who has these higher quality parks that they have access to, and then can we find small changes that can be made to existing parks to make them more restorative, so that more residents have access to these high quality green spaces. In other work, I'm expanding the benefits that are researched in terms of natural environments. So there's a history in environmental psychology of looking at cognitive benefits. So we know that spending time in nature can improve working memory and cognitive flexibility, things like that. I'm really interested in broadening that to the social benefits. So examining how do people feel more connected to others, and can we then use nature spaces as a tool in conflict resolution? So right now I'm wrapping up a study where we're recruiting couples to come into the lab who say they have an ongoing source of tension. And it's a point of difficulty in getting couples to admit they have an ongoing source of tension, even though it's a very normal part of healthy relationships. And we bring them in and they have a discussion about this conflict. But some couples get to go on a walk in the Arb to have this discussion. Some couples walk downtown and some couples stay in the lab. And I don't have results to share because we're finishing data collection this week, and research psychologists, were not allowed to peek at our data ahead of time. But I will say feedback from participants has been amazing. These couples will write back and say, we learned we could take a walk together. And for me, that makes the study worth doing.
Okay, I'm Bob Marins, and when Kelsey introduced me, she introduced me as an emeritus professor. Actually, I had two titles: Professor Emeritus of Architecture and Urban Planning, which reflects my background, and Professor Emeritus, Research Professor Emeritus at the Institute for Social Research. My official title at the Institute for Social Research is Research Professor Emeritus -active. That's what my title is at the university. And right now I've been doing, since I formally retired from the university, I've been active at the Institute doing running a program called SKIP, the Sustainability Cultural Indicators Program. And it's been going on now for about 10 years. We're right now in the field collecting data from students, faculty, and staff here at the university and also at the Flint and Dearborn campuses. How many people have gotten our questionnaire recently? Okay, a couple. We have very large samples of students, faculty, and staff. And we'll be able to look back and see how responses today compared to responses when we started the program back in 2012, 2013. One of the interesting things that we've added to our questionnaire this year is a whole battery of questions dealing with climate anxiety. So stay tuned. We'll have some results probably in late winter, early spring, and we'll have our reports probably by the end of the summer. I wanted to mention that yesterday when we heard Captain Newman speak about her program involving youth and the before and after surveys of these 15 to 18-year-olds, it struck me that my first endeavor, my first big research project at the university was evaluating that program. It was a pilot program at the time, run through the Department of Interior, which the National Park Service is part of, and the U.S. Forest Service. And the very first report we produced, which I brought a copy for, are you here? Oh, okay, this is yours. But there were 3 other reports prepared, and that's what I cut my research experience on, doing that work. So I just wanted to mention that in addition to being a professor and a research professor, I've been a long-time Parks Commissioner. So I'm heavily involved in policy as a charter member of the Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation Commission, and I represent all of you that live in Washtenaw County on the board of the Huron-Clinton Metro Parks. We have several metro parks here in Washtenaw County, and as we were talking this morning, I'm thinking about how can we build a relationship between Nature RX and the park system here, take advantage of that. So.
Well, thank you, everyone. So to start us off, I'm struck by the very different, highly interdisciplinary work that each of you do. And this is also a very interdisciplinary group of participants who are here today with a lot of different backgrounds and interests. And so maybe just hearing from a couple of you, in what ways have working in interdisciplinary teams influenced your thinking, or are there insights that have been important for you in your career as you study or practice nature-based interventions?
I came to the university as a doctoral student, and I was working for a transportation economist who brought me in because of my planning background, and he was interested in new communities, new towns, and got a big grant from the Bureau of Public Roads, which was the forerunner of the Department of Transportation. And he wanted someone with a planning background on his team. And he also became my dissertation advisor, and we worked very closely together. He also brought in a more advanced doctoral student in sociology. And I think I learned more from him, because we shared an office together, than I did from the transportation economist. But it really got me involved in interdisciplinary work. And many of the people that I worked with throughout my career in doing research came from Cs, from psychology, sociology, and the Institute for Social Research in itself is very interdisciplinary. So on the SKIP program, we're working very closely with an urban sociologist as well as I think a environmentalist from a graduate of Cs. So it's been a very rich experience, and there's an organization that I belong to called the Environmental Design research association. It's called EDRA, which is very interdisciplinary. Architects, planners, sociologists, psychologists, interior designers, and so forth. And that organization thrives on interdisciplinarity. So it's been part of my whole career.
Yeah, I'll just add, I have gotten to work with sociologists, urban scientists, computer scientists in a lot of projects in a way that, to me, it's helpful because it reminds me of the complexity of the built environment. It's not that it's nature spaces and urban spaces, right? For many of us, we're experiencing nature through urban green spaces that are part of cities, and even though many of us would say spending time in nature is good, we're not saying go live off the grid, don't live by other people, or don't be a part of this urban system. And so working with people who study the science of the urban system, then sociologists at this level of groups of people within a city, and then the people I work most closely with, of psychologists at the individual level, and how our minds are working as individuals, going across these different levels of analysis, I think has really benefited to the views that I have about how complex the environment is and the different ways that we can research that at different levels of analysis.
I guess maybe the thing that I would add to that is, in addition to the excellent comments, which I would wholeheartedly agree with, because some of my research has dealt with real application of some of these ideas, I end up working with individuals that are on the ground, right, that really care about the ideas, and it's not, and they may not always have as sophisticated of an understanding of how we conduct research and the importance of why we do things the way that we do. So it really forces me to take a step back and really be able to explain that to them about the steps that we're taking, why we're taking it, and what the road ahead looks like, right? So that causes me to slow down. It causes me to think about my own expertise, which is always challenging. That's probably the biggest thing that I would take away.
Keep bouncing down, or you want to move on? Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about, of course, as we're talking about all the incredible benefits of nature, also thinking, are there any challenges or cautions that researchers or practitioners should keep in mind? Maybe ways that nature engagement can be structured or adapted to serve people's needs in the best ways. I'm curious, from your experience or research, any findings around that?
I can maybe start, and other people can jump in. I want to be a little bit careful here because I think there's no wrong way to experience nature. So, we can, there's certainly great value in trying to understand things like dosage effects or the conditions under which, certain interventions or certain experiences work. That's very valuable. But to also recognize that there are huge individual differences in terms of how people experience nature, and the types of nature interactions vary tremendously. It can be, spending a week in some remote wilderness, great, but it can also be the houseplant, right, that you're taking care of. It's just a vast range of different experiences that could produce benefits. I think Keely had mentioned in her lightning talk, one of the dangers could be this, you called it commodification, but I might characterize it as a medicalization of nature, right? That we can turn it into this treatment that we can give people. And in addition to some of the dangers that you mentioned, I would also say that also fixates us on certain kinds of outcomes that are clinically significant, that are, that we want to capture from that perspective, but it leaves out a whole range of benefits that people get from nature experiences. That people have spiritual experiences. There were people that talked about awe and wonder coming from those interactions. And those may not fit into that neat little clinical box that we like to put around things. So I'll let other people jump off of that.
I think one perspective on that is something we spoke to earlier about people from different backgrounds having different levels of comfort with the outdoors and nature. So in the individual psychotherapy relationship, sometimes I have clients coming to me with maybe a long background in nature-based spirituality. So what I'm doing with them looks radically different than clients coming to me who maybe had never considered going outside before in a therapeutic way. And so I invite them outside, and maybe we're doing actually exposure therapy. So we're using the perceived threat they experience of nature as a way of working through a phobia or anxiety. So radically different approaches using the same resource of nature.
The practice of early childhood and nature play in particular, your question makes me think about the role of risky play and risk in healthy human development, which is very different from danger. Risk is represent opportunities where we can see the challenge and we get to make decisions for ourselves, whether we are ready to trial with that environment, that challenging environment, whereas danger represents a hidden, a hidden risk or a hidden danger. And that is, of course, something to be avoided when we can. But again, in this whole experience of nature connection and outdoor access, there is some risk, and that can be a developmentally a place of great growth.
Something else that has come up a few times throughout our symposium over the last day are some of the changes that are happening in society, in the climate, right? Several of you mentioned this, the emphasis on place and how to find a sense of place in an increasingly digital world, right? And so with some of these changes, again, with climate change, again, maybe technology utilization, how do you see your research or practices changing over time or adapting to some of these shifts in how we live our lives?
I'll start. So another study that I'm running on campus right now, we're seeing how walking in the Arboretum can reduce rumination and the emotion regulation strategies that people tend to use if they're thinking about a problem and we send them on this nature walk. How do they start processing it differently? And when people come back from doing this walk and they've answered our surveys, we ask them at the end, what do you think this study was about? And although some people mention that it's about nature, a lot of them think that we're studying how spending time away from their phone for an hour is impacting them, because we ask them to leave their phone in the lab so that they're not distracted. And for many people, this is an extremely anxiety-producing event. The other thing they think is, oh, you're asking me to walk around without my headphones in, because we ask them to leave those in the lab as well. And this idea of headphones in all the time is something I think about because, to me, it creates a barrier to engaging with the natural world around us, right? If we've supplanted the nature sounds or the bird sounds or the water sounds that we could be listening to, and instead we've created the sounds that we all always want to hear, I see that as potentially preventing people from having brief nature experiences as they walk across campus. Instead of focusing on the world around them, they've created their own environment for them to be focused on. The other thing, though, that was challenging in this study is that we gave them a paper map, and people don't know how to use paper maps anymore. Like, we start at East Hall and we have them walk on South University, and then they go into the Arb, and we live track them using Find My iPhone. And people get lost a lot. And so I think that's something that we need to think about, are ways that we can, okay, use the digital technologies of wayfinding. Everyone has GPS on their phone now, but how can we do that in a way that then doesn't just keep them sucked in on the phone and they start, they use it to the point that they need, but how do we then get them to not just focus on their phone the whole time?
I can build on that some too. Just with that tree project I mentioned about finding a tree partner on campus, they have to do that assignment unplugged and spend multiple sessions with their tree friend, but the first one is for an hour without any tech. And that's the hardest part, is getting them over that, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be bored. Like, how do I connect? And eventually they acclimate to that. And it also helps, I think, teams. I mean, I'm dealing mostly with first-year undergrads, and giving them space to work in teams and reflect on it as a team, and that shared experience helps them. And a lot of the reflections I give them about what they write about their partner and the tree partner can't reflect about family or sports or other consumptive types of things. So it really focuses on them and the moment, which is hard for them because, getting there, they're lost, literally and figuratively. The other thing I would use as an example here is some tree planting exercises I'm doing this semester with students. And they've gravitated to them very quickly. And I've asked them things like trying to do the research about biodiversity increases on campus with their planting activities and carbon footprints and things. But one of the things I'm asking them is about the cultural implications of them actually working together as a team. And it's been really interesting to see and hear them discuss that space of things they've not done before and that they're doing it for the first time together, and the culture that's created around that particular activity.
I'm glad that you told that story, Kate, because this morning when I was taking the bus to come here, I was surrounded by people who all had their headphones on and they were looking at their phones. It was just a beautiful autumn day. The sun was shining, nice breeze, and they were completely somewhere else. They were just not with me at the bus stop. They were somewhere else, which that's worth acknowledging. I mean, it is depriving people of an opportunity to get some benefit from nature, and I don't think they even recognize or realize that they're missing out on that. You see it walking across campus all the time. I mean, we know that one of the things that can help with memory consolidation is time in nature, is giving yourself that break, letting the mind do some processing. And some of that processing happens below conscious awareness. It's not something that you have to actively be focusing on. But when you fill your cognitive system with all of this other stuff, that you're just not giving the brain a chance to build those connections that would be happening. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that. I had something else, but it'll come back to me.
I can build on that. So yes, we can't learn if we don't have some amount of regulation established, right? And I've noticed this in my teaching, particularly in a post-COVID world, that students are presenting with more dysregulation, just kind of baseline, and presenting with fewer social skills, more social anxiety because of all of those reasons and because of pandemic isolation and all the things. So I find it kind of impossible to expect my students in the classroom to actually learn and absorb anything if we don't first attend to the animal human. So I even did that this morning by having you get up and shake it off because you'd been sitting for a couple hours already. And that was actually very deliberate to kind of create some of that capacity to take in new information. So this is part of how I'm using nature, by taking my students outside, is giving them both the opportunity to co-regulate with nature and ideally teaching them the skill of co-regulating with nature so they can carry that on both in their personal lives and in their professional practice as therapists later.
Let me add one more thing, which is I think there's there's some problems that we face in terms of climate anxiety, in terms of some of these issues with technology. But I think that there's also an opportunity that if we can do work that actually improves the environment that we are interacting with. If we can steward the environment, there's lots of good evidence in the field of civic ecology that suggests to us that that act of caring for nature not only benefits nature, but it benefits us. It makes us feel more in a relationship with the natural environment. And it kind of leads to some of these social benefits that you're hearing about, psychological benefits. So, you know, there's something to be gained, I think, from stewarding and being a participant in that relationship.
I know we're coming closer to the end of our time for this panel, and so wanted to hear from you about what's next. So we've talked a lot about really wonderful ideas, and I think probably a question that's on a lot of people's minds of how do we do this, right? Or what does it take to get to the next step? And so in your own work, what would you like to see done in terms of a research project or intervention type of work? Yeah, what would be next for you? What would be important for you to see? Yeah, please, Bob.
Well, one of the things that I neglected to mention is that besides my involvement in the Washtenaw County Parks and the Metro Parks, I'm also on the board of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. And something that I've been working on for a number of years is getting the Metro Parks to have a presence in the city of Detroit. They're going to have one now. In the building a very large park on the riverfront right at the moment near the Ambassador Bridge and the Ralph C. Wilson Park. And within that park, there's going to be a Metro Park, which it's really based around a water garden with lots of vegetation, water, and so forth. So there's been a big investment on the part of the Metro Parks in the city of Detroit. In terms of a research project, it would be wonderful to track users of that park to see how they're responding. There's going to be a big basketball arena and all kinds of other things, play equipment and so forth. But this one nature park with water and vegetation is something the Metro Park is doing. And what I've been thinking about is how do we evaluate the impact of that on users of the riverfront facility, this large park within which the Metro Park Water Garden is located. So that's a wonderful research project for the future to really track, and be interesting to see Detroit residents, primarily African-American youth. They will be big users of this park, and see what impact this use of this facility will have on them, and follow those kids over time to see what develops from that experience.
So one of the research projects that I would be very excited to do, in grad school, I built an app to generate restorative walking routes for pedestrians. So pretend you're going to Google Maps, and instead of giving you the shortest distance to walk to the grocery store, it gives you a slightly longer route, but it's filled with more trees, more grass, and it has less car noise. And so I piloted that. It exists for the city of Chicago. And I keep wondering if maybe there's a way to use the Nature RX app that already exists for Michigan to generate restorative walking routes on campus. So if you're transiting the campus to get to your meeting in a different building, instead of taking the shortest path, maybe we can prompt you to pass a few more Nature RX spots, or to notice them as you're transiting around, and build that into students' daily lives, staff daily lives, because everyone's busy, but if we're transiting these areas anyway, maybe there's a way that we can do it so that they have a more restorative experience.
As a practitioner, I'm thinking about your question, and feeling from my point of view that a couple of calls to action might include, one, I really appreciate this public health framing that we're partially working with today. Colleagues in the state of Texas, of all places, have an amazing Texas Child and Nature statewide organization that is very interdisciplinary and very impactful. In our state, there is a brand new coalition called Michigan Children and Nature Coalition. Largely, our priority projects are greening schoolyards initiatives and moving learning outdoors. But I would love to have built environment folks, public health folks involved in Michigan Child and Nature Coalition. You can Google that or you can reach out to me, certainly for that. Another call to action, perhaps, for those of you who are students in this audience today. I'm going to put a plug in for Matthew Nichols 3 sponsored student orgs. There's Campus Farm Club for those who might be interested in food justice and sustainable foodways. There's an Eco Restoration Club for developing a skill set of ecological management that is all, embodied work as well. And the last one is the Friends of Gaffield Children's Garden, which is a centered specifically on nature as health and wellness.
I'm really excited about the aspects of campus as a lab, campus as studio that's gaining traction as we move towards greater amounts of sustainability on campus. Having students literally creating new forms of beauty on campus. I have a student team working on converting lawn areas around their dormitories into pollinator garden and cut flower spaces, actually creating the compost out of their dormitory cafeteria using worms and other things. I teach a class called From Tree to Table. We're on the cusp of having a sawmill on campus that I have facilitated. So having students be able to find the source of lumber right on campus, find the stumps for where the logs came from, tell that story and embrace that story in a different kind of a way, facilitate the actual creation of the lumber, designing and building objects with a newfound respect for place and that material in ways that they haven't experienced before is pretty powerful. And then designing goods that stay on campus, that serve a broader community. So that civic engagement really is important.
At the School of Social Work, I've been advocating for more adventure and nature-based courses to be added, really returned to the curriculum. They used to be here and dropped off after retirement, so trying to get those reinstated. And at Adventure Leadership, we are continuing to pursue and build partnerships. So one of our big, exciting successes that you'll hear about in the next panel is collaboration with CAPS to run nature-based therapy groups out at our property where we can have spaciousness and privacy in nature, which is maybe difficult to get at the ARB, but you can get out at the AL property because we have fences and gates. So continuing to build partnerships with different stakeholders on campus and in the community so that the resources that we have available are more widely utilized by folks from diverse backgrounds with diverse needs.
I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way because I'm going to put a challenge to all of you rather than talk about what I think I would like to do. I think that I would advocate that all of you think about a small experiment that you can do with nature. And I say a small experiment because it doesn't have to be, 3 hours going out in the woods. It can be something just momentary, something small. It can be bringing a plant to a meeting with someone else that you have and really paying attention to how does that change the interaction? Does it make you feel more comfortable? Does it ease the tension that might exist in that meeting? Think about breaks that you take. Rather than going to your phone, try to take some breaks watching nature videos. Does it make a difference? I mean, these small interactions, these small changes that you can make, I think they might make a bigger difference than we often think about. So.
And just highlighting the many layers and levels that this can happen on: planning and public policy, public health, and then the everyday integration, making it relevant to people's lives, right? How to weave it into just the routines of life, right? The idea of walking paths that are restorative to integrating into classroom settings or clinical settings, to be able to embrace that and this idea of the great experiment, right? What could this be? What could be done to bring nature a little bit more into our lives and well-being. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And I see my colleague Colleen Green here waiting to give us a little bit of a wellness break. So thank you.
I'd like you to take your hands and go up here. I'm going to go here just in case. I've never been told I'm quiet, but just I want everyone to make sure to hear me. So just feel how good that feels. We're going to the point of discomfort only, never to the point of pain. Okay, now just bring the hands down and out in front. Sort of push your back out in a C. Feel how good that feels. Breathing through. Okay, if you can do so, please put your hands out to the side. You might have to adjust a little bit so you don't bip somebody next to you. Let's put the thumbs up. And we're going to pull back just a bit so you feel this right here in your pecs. Can everybody feel that? Okay, I'm hearing that resounding yes, so thank you. Okay, forward. Thumbs down, please. Come back and a little bit up. You're going to feel this in your biceps. Just breathe again. We're going just to that point of discomfort, never to the point of pain. And relax. Let's go over the top for your tricep stretch. Didn't know I had those on. Good. Keep breathing through. Focus on how you're feeling. Shut everything else out, just how you're feeling. Okay, let's go ahead and switch to the other side. And relax. I know it's challenging where we are to do a lot of lower body stuff, but we're going to try this. If you can, feel free to put your foot on the chair. The top of the foot on the chair, and then you're going to push the knee down while pushing the hip forward. Can folks feel that in the quad, which is in the front of the leg? See, look, you're already responding verbally. Thank you. I appreciate the teaching here. Just breathing through. Okay, go ahead and switch to the other side. Now, generally, we would hold these stretches a little bit longer, but I want to make sure that you get some of the break that you're promised in the next few minutes. So we're just going to get through some of the stretches, and then I'm going to give you time to move about if you'd like. Relax. Okay, go ahead. If you have, you two can come up here, but everyone else put your hands on the chair in front of you, please. It's like a cat-cow stretch, but you're doing it standing. So push that upper back way up, sort of tuck that chin in. Y'all know what the cat-cow? Okay, now sort of push the belly forward and the head comes up. It took me a while because I am not familiar with cats nor cows, so I wasn't sure, but I think we've all got it now. Let's try it again. Chin in, push that upper back way up. And bring the belly in and the head comes up. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to have you sit for just a moment because I want to show you a couple stretches that you can do while sitting, because while we love to stand, it's not always possible for us to do so. And does this work now? How do I turn this on? Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm going to come over here and move this back. Okay, everybody go ahead and take one hand, it doesn't matter which, palm down on the chair and sit on it, please. Okay. Other hand, now I have to use this, but keep your hand there. Let's take the other hand and very gently push the opposite ear to the shoulder. So if you're sitting on your right hand, it's left ear to left shoulder or vice versa. Should feel a nice stretch in the side of the neck. And again, just very gentle, breathing through. And head up. Let's go ahead and do it on the other side. Palm down on the chair, sit on that. Going the opposite way, breathing through. Okay, let's go ahead and put the shoulder blades back and down. Drop your chin down to your chest. I'd like you to take a couple of big, deep breaths. Inhale, and I'd like you to exhale audibly and picture yourself breathing out your stress and tension. A couple of big, deep breaths there. And head up. How does everybody feel? All right, you've got a few minutes, I think, before the next session, so please feel free if you'd like to stand up again, chat with one another, picture this green as being nature. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We very much appreciate you coming.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll start again at 2:30. Yeah, time's a little wrong. Well, it was 15, whatever. All right, everyone, we're going to start our next panel. So if all the panelists might come up, find a seat, get comfy.
I know. It's the end of the day, too, Sam. How many of us are there?
It's full. Okay. Should be full. Over here. All right. All right. I'll let Tony take it from here.
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you've all had a chance to eat, refresh, stretch, feel like a human animal for a minute. It's been a really excellent day so far. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to this particular panel, too, because we get to hone in on a kind of a special topic, which is prescribing. And I get to moderate this lovely panel with a lot of interesting folks who are working across a whole different variety of sectors and different approaches. So with that, I'm going to quickly just say folks' names. I'm going to spare everybody the introductions, but what I will ask is, like Kelsey did with, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work, what excites you, what's going on, and then we'll come back for some questions. Is that okay? All right, so our speakers today include, let's see if I can get this exactly right. So we have Connor Crawford, Marcia Benz, who is holding a hand auger up there. That's cool. There you go. Mark Clegg. What else do we have there? Shire Sheehan, Alex Gendrusina, Katie Stannard, and Lisa Shea. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, and how about we start here?
Sure. Yeah.
Tell us about your work.
Absolutely. Hey guys, my name's Connor. I'm a Postmasters of Social Work Fellow at CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services. Majority of my time is spent in the therapy room with students, both undergraduate and graduate, mostly in individual settings, but do some relationship and group work as well. Probably most relevant to our purposes here is Shire and I co-founded the first ever CAPS Nature Therapy Group. We collaborated with our amazing colleagues at Adventure Leadership. And we had a great time both this summer, and we just wrapped up our fall group. Just a great opportunity to do some co-regulation and mindfulness skills with students up at the Adventure Education Center. Another particular passion of mine is men's mental health, which has some really interesting intersections with nature work as well. So yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I am Marcia Benz. All right. Marcia Benz. I work at Wolverine Wellness as assistant director, and I manage the wellness coaching program there, and also part of the Wellbeing Academy trainings, and then I also teach a class at the School of Public Health. And so I spend a lot of my time with our wellness coaching, either training wellness coaches or helping wellness coaches do their work, or wellness coaching myself. And nature and getting out in nature and mindfulness is all part of that. And wellness coaching is on the lower end of the continuum of mental health. So we're non-clinical service, so we're for students, and we're for students who don't have a clinical diagnosis, although sometimes we have students who come to wellness coaching who are also seeing a clinical therapist at the same time. All right, yours is working.
I think so. Yep, it is working. Thank you, Marcia. My name is Mark Clegg, and I'm the Executive Director of the University of Michigan Arts Initiative. So really more on the arts prescribing side than the nature prescribing side, although this Wednesday for our all-staff meeting in the Arts Initiative, for some reason, all of the air seemed to have gone out of my staff's life all of a sudden. And so we went for a walk in the Arb for our staff meeting, which I highly recommend. Was really, really lovely for every one of us. And but we've been exploring the possibility of arts prescribing. It turns out it's actually a long-standing thing, not quite since 1912, I don't think, and the work of the Park Service around cardiac care, but it is something that started 40, 50 years ago, largely in the UK, and there's literally thousands of studies showing the efficacy of arts experiences, art making, as being a contributor to wellness. So we're exploring bringing those activities to campus, and sort of just the Arts Initiative superpower is really as a connector. So we're really trying to bring together the literally hundreds and hundreds of events that are available for faculty, staff, and students, and then the needs of the population for well-being, and sort of connecting with Wolverine Wellness, connecting with CAPS and UHS and the medical system.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shire, like where the hobbits are from in Lord of the Rings. And like Connor, I work at CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, as I'm part of a fellowship program for post-masters of social work folks who are getting their start in therapy, specifically in college counseling centers. And just, first of all, like, so grateful to be here, so grateful to Connor for doing the work of getting the group started at CAPS with me, so grateful to our partners at Adventure Leadership, without whom this absolutely would not have happened. And we connected because of another conference and watching you all present on the work that you were doing. It really resonated for me, having come from just on the heels of my graduate school experience, where I was specializing in experiential interventions, and wanting to bring those to college campuses more, because I think there's amazing work that's happening in a lot of private practices around, like, bringing nature and experiential interventions. And I've been like, where is this, like, in college counseling centers? And there just needs to be a lot more of it. So having, like, that shared energy to really bring this to University of Michigan has been an amazing experience for me, and exactly what I was hoping for out of, like, this fellowship, and what I want to keep running up in where we go next, and keeping the ball rolling here at the University of Michigan after Connor and I leave, as we're both on this 2-year contract, is definitely a focus of where we are right now. There's a lot of really cool opportunities for that, and I think there's a lot more to say about it, but maybe I'll leave more of those details for later. But just really experiencing the absolute magic of doing this group out in nature with University of Michigan students. We've got both undergraduates and graduate students who've been participating in this group, and experiencing both the benefits in real time that we're seeing for students in the group, and so much of what Connor and I experience running the group, how this group energizes us as therapists, as practitioners, gives us, like, flexibility, creativity back into our workday. And our staff needs that. Our staff desperately needs that to be able to provide those kinds of services to students too. So yeah, there's just so much to say about it, and this is a wonderful space of creative and passionate people who are working in it. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Gendersina. I'm a clinical psychologist and one of the counselors at Faculty and Staff Counseling and Consultation, so FASCO. Excited to be here with you all and to be part of this wonderful panel. I spend a majority of my time providing counseling services and doing different emotional health well-being presentations, and I use a lot of mindfulness in my work, and so that really lends itself to nature, which is something I look to incorporate. Kelsey Stratton, who was the moderator of the previous panel, and then Katie here on my left, are also working on a program called The Breath of Fresh Air, which is really intended to help people take a moment to connect with nature in their busy days. And so that really, I think, bridges together what we're talking about today. I also do a lot of focused work around stress management. So a lot of people will come to us, with interest to increase their stress management skills and connecting with nature through taking breaks is really a helpful tool that we talk about as one of the things that you can do on the beautiful campus of U of M. Excited to be here, and thank you.
I'm Katie Stannard. I'm part of the mental health counseling and consultation services of M Healthy. Happy to be here with everyone on this panel. Thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone who has attended and participated, spoken, asked questions, and just shown up today to have this really wonderful, creative exchange. I was thinking about how Nature RX developed through the wonderful support of voices of the staff, and this was happening during the pandemic, and we were thinking a lot about how can we do, as Shire talked about, sort of help the helpers, people who were not at home and removed from workplace, but who were at the hospital and working and in very challenging and dire circumstances. So I just wanted to share that as another little nugget of how this all came to be. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Shea, and I'm with Recreational Sports. We sit within student life, and we report to Dr. Ernst within his health and well-being portfolio. Within my purview, Adventure Leadership is one of my programs. I don't say mine, it's ours. The people that are on my team are experts in their area, and they get to run the program, so I just try to open doors and provide resources for them. Also, club sports, we have 30 club teams that compete nationally. So if you think about it, we're more like a D3 or a D4 athletic department. They are all student org, student run, and it's pretty amazing. So they find their movement through well-being by participating in their athletic endeavors. Then we have the Group X and personal training, specialized group training program, as well as intramural sports and esports. I think the other component that you should know is that we have the fitness facilities on campus. One thing that I'm very excited about is the Hadley Family Recreation and Wellbeing Center that'll be opening next fall. It's a $165 million project. It's going to have a phenomenal indoor climbing center and among other really very, let's say, just cutting edge pieces of equipment, strength and cardio. And yeah, I'm excited about that. I think the other two things, and I'm going to continue to manifest this, but maybe both of them, related to our Adventure Education Center out there on Dixboro Road near the Botanical Gardens, is we need to get buses out there. So that's something that we, as a well-being, I'm on the well-being steering committee, well-being collective steering committee. And one of those things that we do is we focus on the systems and the policies of the university. And so we're not looking at programs and services. So this is something that I continue to bring up, and it keeps bubbling up. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is to find some institutional ownership for Nature RX. So yeah, Tony, that's what I got.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. With the time we have, I really want to make sure we get to some core questions that I know have come up throughout the day. And, you know, one thing that I've observed throughout the day, and something that has been pervasive in the fields that we kind of co-collectively represent, is that there's a discomfort with the kind of concept of prescription versus invitation. You know, that it's an easier, lower barrier of access to invite someone to take advantage of, as opposed to prescribe them to do, right? And I remember in Dr. Ernst's keynote this morning, he talked about that. If he and the medical community say that patients will take the medicine. We know that power. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, as we think about its adoption and the comfort level with folks across institutions, could we speak a little bit about where you see that going and what you've seen so far in terms of how it works how it's working as a prescription right now?
In terms of wellness coaching, We're based on motivational interviewing, so everything is pulled from your client and listened for within your client. So we wouldn't actually prescribe. We would provide a menu of choices, but that prescription could be part of the menu of choices. And so, I can see where it could work really well in a medical setting if people have access to, health services, right? Because not everybody does. But I think in other ways, I think that prescription can still be used, but it can be used as a menu of choices, part of a menu.
I mean, I can jump in. I mean, I think from my perspective at the Arts Initiative, the notion of prescribing is very important to us, at least strategically. And part of it is to send the message that, the arts and movement and connecting with nature is not just something nice to have, it's something that's essential. And I think, part of the message of prescribing is that when we are prescribed something and we take it and we trust the physician to give us this pill or directive, that there's some evidence behind that reinforces the efficacy of that experience, right? So the World Health Organization has categorized 3,000 studies just in the arts, I don't know about Nature RX, probably more, that show the efficacy of art and art making for well-being. And then this movement to socialist prescribing, which I think sort of embraces all we're doing, to my knowledge anyway, started in the UK with the British National Health Service, and they've been following a group of enrollees since 1947, looking at multi-dimensions of well-being connected to all sorts of things. And they have a statistic that I still don't know if I believe, but they claim that one arts experience a month is equivalent to doing 1 hour of physical exercise a week in terms of its long-term outcomes for the health and well-being of this cohort they followed since 1947. So the evidence is there. So I think one of the things we're asserting with the prescribing notion is that this is not just a nice idea or a thought that artists and nature lovers have to try to share the joy that they get out of it. But this is actually something that has been shown through research to be a positive factor. And so it tries to shift people's attitude. So you can invite people to participate, and I think a lot of the prescribing programs that I'm aware of also have a self-prescribing or an invitation feature that tries to open the door more broadly and to be more accessible. You don't have to go through a medical professional. But convincing the medical professionals, and many of you in this room, that this actually would be something that you could talk to patients about, that could be a complementary therapy and CAPS or whatever, really expands the possible impact. I mean, there are 35,000 employees at Michigan Medicine. So if they all are part of this and start to see arts as something that's prescribed, if it's in my chart and you can pick this as a thing, it sends a very powerful message about the potential of this work.
So I'm going to chime in here a little bit. So recreational sports is a non-clinical, proactive program. We're not prescribing anybody to come in. And we have over 70% of all undergraduate, graduate, and professional students participate in our facilities by doing their individual workouts. They participate in our programs: adventure leadership, club sports, intramural sports, esports, group X, personal training, specialized training. So we cover a lot of students. And again, it's proactive. The students and faculty and staff who have access to our facilities also are making a choice to come in. What I also want to say is, as I'm sitting here talking about movement RX, is that movement does not have to be that workout. Movement is any time your body moves. It's maybe the stretches we were just doing with Colleen from M Healthy. It's sitting in your chair and just sitting up straight and rolling your shoulder blades down. So thinking about all of those things, because we all have mobility issues and some modalities of exercise don't work for us. And so where I'm really happy that I think we're moving, and we've had some conversations around Nature RX and Arts RX and Movement RX with the Wellbeing Collective team members, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible here at Michigan. And I think that one thing that we did make a step forward with is that while I can say, I know my primary care physician always asks me this, And we've been told through our physical therapy friends at UHS that the healthcare providers within UHS are asking about, and I want to make sure I get this right, it's the PAVS, P-A-V-S. It's the physical activity vital sign. So they're asking you how many minutes a day you move. What is that intensity? All of those things. And so again, it doesn't have to be that workout that just gets you so sweaty. It's just walking, it's moving. And where I see this also happening is there's so many overlaps to all of our prescriptive programs. So.
A little like half-baked thought for me on this, if that's okay. Right, so I am in my now second year of working at CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, and my second year being like a full-time therapist. There's a lot that I'm still learning and still kind of forming my opinion on, and my opinion is also like forming today, listening to everybody, listening to the keynote address and listening to the different perspectives in this room. I think I'm coming from a place where the idea of prescribing to the people that I work with, to the students that I work with, there's something about that that's always been uncomfortable to me. And listening to you all today, like I'm feeling more like open to the idea of prescribing and using that language, while still like wanting to think about it more and kind of integrate that a little more. But I did want to speak a bit to, you know, this idea of like prescriptions versus invitations, what invitations maybe offers and what counseling maybe offers is let's do this together, kind of differently than maybe a doctor prescribing you take this, you go and do this on your own. What we can do in sessions with students is practice something together, and that's what like our nature group can do, is we are out here with you in nature. This isn't something you have to go figure out on your own. I'm with you. I'm also going through this with you. And I think in my experience so far with counseling, which again, I'm new, it's limited, but what I'm seeing is that is what leads to greater change for the students that I work with, is when we work on something together.
I really appreciate all these points, and I think it's a great question, and I'm not surprised that we hear a variety of answers, because I think about the different types of work that we do, the different connections we have with people, the different relationships, the different roles we're in. And so I can think about that I worked in a primary care setting, and that when I was in that setting, people wanted specific directions. And so a prescription might make sense. I was embedded in a primary care team, and that was part of the culture and part of a medical model. When I think about my work in different settings, and I think, we hear this kind of variety of approach, is I think about my current work in the same way I do in the primary care, but the language might be different. So I work very collaboratively. And so for me to tell someone I prescribe this can be received a variety of different ways depending on the person and a lot of different factors. And so I will approach it with oftentimes a very value-based approach. So understanding what's important to the person, what are they looking to do, how can nature be a component of that if they like it to be. And in terms of stress management, we'll really talk about how connecting with nature or getting outside even just helps you recenter and helps you replenish yourself. And I think hearing about the experiences on the research and practice panel was really fascinating and resonating with the fact that when I talk with people about connecting with nature and taking a break, is to not have your phone and to make sure that you are being fully present, and that again connects to mindfulness. But again, I think this is a great question, and I wouldn't expect there to be an answer that's similar across everyone.
Yeah, everything that everybody's saying is very much resonating with me. Building off what Shire and Alexander were saying, prescription versus invitation feels like more of a spectrum than a binary to me. And I think that, it sounds like all of us have the clinical judgment up here to decide whether or not an invitation versus a prescription might work better for the client sitting across from us, the group around us. Is it possible to offer a non-pathologizing prescription? I don't know. It might not be. I don't know if it's possible to disentangle that word from a little orange bottle and CVS's fluorescent lights. But I also think that, those things, the drop-down menu in my chart, the insurance code, like those things do lend an air of credibility to certain populations who, therapy and other modalities, nature invitations might be more stigmatized. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's, too woo-woo or whatever. Like, I'm not going to engage in that. But if it's being endorsed by your PCP, who you have a long relationship with and you trust, and it is coming maybe in the form of a prescription, you might be more likely to do that. I'm thinking about my male clients who have a really hard time. It's their first time in therapy. They don't like to open up. They've been socialized not to engage in these kind of like vulnerable emotional experiences. And if we package, time in nature as a prescription, and that gets them out there, and that's very healing for them, and that, becomes a social determinant of behavioral health. I mean, that's amazing. So I think that, reflecting upon who's in front of you, using a values-based approach, and thinking about, what will resonate more with the person in front of me. And I think we know that, there are plenty of populations who have been harmed by westernized medicine, and then there are others who I think you kind of almost need to package these things through that system in order for them to be most efficacious. So yeah, this idea of a spectrum versus a binary is kind of how I've been thinking about the invitation versus prescription conversation here.
Something you said, Connor, made me think about one of the things that NatureRx project team members have talked about in the realm of the invitation is what could happen colleague to colleague or friend to friend or even supervisor with staff to be able to say, oh, would you like to consider taking a walk or having a nature experience together that doesn't analyze that there is something wrong or that there is a need for an intervention, but is simply opening the door to a different kind of connection. And I was thinking too, I think maybe Kate Schertz had to leave, but I think some of the work at the Emotion and Cognition Lab looks at what happens when people are next to each other, moving through nature instead of across from each other at a table, and how conversations can open up that way. And those of you who may have children who have experienced that driving in the car in that somewhat captive space, sometimes the tongue is loosened and things happen in the car that don't happen elsewhere. And similarly, in perhaps a wide open space in natural settings, there are other opportunities that seem to open up.
Thank you. The next question has to do with something I know we're not supposed to talk about when we're talking about nature, technology. And we often hear the common narrative, right, out there is that social media and too much technology is detrimental. Go into nature and you'll be healed. Ta-da, right? Of course, that's not as simple as it is, and as many people have said, it's about intentionality, right? It's not about this false binary of technology versus nature, but it's about intentionality, or at least that's something that has been talked about today, being intentional with your time and your focus. Where's Nate? Being intentional with your focus and healthy work. Anyway, my question for you is, have you seen or are you seeing places where technology, nature, and health are intersecting, or in the case, or arts too? And I'll leave it there. Let's see where it's productive instead of fitting that dominant narrative.
Actually, we've been involved, Wolverine Wellness and Wellness Coaching in particular has been involved in a partnership with Michigan Medicine and Dr. Sung Choi's lab, where they are working on a wellness app, and they did a lot of testing during COVID, and it was very, very successful. And so now they're using this app with wellness coaching, so they're going to be able to randomly assign people to either wellness coaching alone or wellness coaching with the app to see if that bumps it up a little bit. But the cool thing about this app is that it has nature included in it. So it has awe as one of the things that is included. So it has a way to take pictures and put it in the app of things that create awe for you when you're outdoors. It has movement outside and how much you're getting outside. It has all different kinds of things that we know actually improve people's well-being, but in this app. And so for me, it's like, I was one of those people who was like the last person to get an iPhone because I did not want to be contacted 24/7, right? And then I finally had to do it. Now, of course, I can't live without it. But students these days are using them for everything, and they use it for what to do from one moment to the next. It's like, oh, we want to do something tonight. What's going on, right? And they go to their phones. And so I think there's a great opportunity here, given that technology is not going away, to connect what we're doing in well-being with the technology.
So I don't know, I'm not answering the question, but I think a direction we've got to go, and it's related to technology, is how AI, well-being, and nature intersect. Because I think the way that, obviously students get all their information from their palm. Keep it right here and they're going to take it. I'm seeing more and more of our students using AI, checking in prompts. They're using it as a search engine. It's really pretty amazing how AI can intersect with your daily life. And so I throw that out there too, just because technology is so large, but I think AI is right in front of us. And if we don't get a grasp on it, it's going to explode and we're not going to know where to go.
I think one thing I can say, probably that same point you made, Connor, about spectrum in terms of prescribing could be applied to technology in the sense that it's easy to say that technology is bad and nature is good, and that nature doesn't have technology with it, which I'm sure we could interrogate that. So, one of the things about the arts is that, traditional artistic practice often takes a lifetime of dedication to play the piano or to learn how to be a painter. And there's so much about technology these days that's enabling people to manipulate images. Used to be the photography was a very specialized thing, Ansel Adams and his nature photography, right? And carting around this incredibly heavy equipment and being able to mix, chemicals on site and process, took an enormous amount of effort. And now, any one of us in this room could probably take a picture of this and share it with 1 million people, right? So there's one of the things we do at the Arts Initiative is we've been surveying students about their attitudes about art. And one of the things we ask them is, are you an artist? And we defined artist, if I can remember correctly, by being like a musician, a dancer, an actor, a visual artist, or a filmmaker, including photography. And 75% of Michigan undergrads said yes, that they are an artist. And that was an astonishingly high number, to me anyway. And because 75% of the students on campus are not art majors at Stamps and SMT and Taubman, right? So there is a way in which technology has given people the feeling that they can artistically engage with the world and make things that are beautiful and that they find, aesthetically pleasing to share with other people. And to me, that seems like a real opportunity to use technology as a way of enabling. The app that the Voices of the Staff put together for Nature RX, for example, is just stunning to me. And everybody has it, and they don't know it's there yet. And they just got to be told that they have access to this, right? So I think technology and AI is here, and it's part of our lives, and we have to find a way to use it effectively.
I was thinking, Mark, about I'm so surprised by that statistic and very heartened by it. I was thinking about how wouldn't it be cool if you could utilize AI and say, I'd like to learn how to paint with watercolors in a 5-minute activity using just this that I have here. or this type of music that I want to learn or listen to or something as interesting entry points or gateways to learning and creative expression if those have not been part of one's wheelhouse.
Think of how most things are, again, context dependent. And so I can envision, some of the themes and things we've been discussing in terms of technology maybe detracting from an experience or connection to arts or nature. But there are a lot of ways, I think, in which it also enhances it. So for one thing that comes to mind for me is we might do visualization with someone that we're working with, where they're learning to kind of take a mini vacation in their mind and go to a place that maybe is special to them. And for many people, that seems to be connected to nature. And depending on what that person has access to when they do this, or in general, that can be enhanced by having, as we were discussing, I think, like some nature sounds in the background or something that adds to that experience. And so when I think about this question, it really goes back to how is it being used, and what is the context, because it can be used in both the way that, again, detracts or maybe harms the experience or enhances it.
5 minutes still? Okay, great. Well, in that case, I have time for another question. And this one's a little stickier and something that we've edged around a lot today. When the idea of utilizing the outdoors as medicine in 2024 has serious racialized and colonial echoes and continuances more than echoes. And on one side of the spectrum, and on the other side of the spectrum, this kind of work has a validation, even though there's tons of literature, there's this validation perception challenge, tightly on the other side. So I guess it's really a question about equity and justice and how do we mix this or bring this into focus in a way that's ethically responsible and with communities, and respects that history and that ongoing present.
I think about just how important it is to be considering social determinants of health behind everything that we developed, whether it be, biophilic design, or whether it be wellness coaching, or whether it be a nature program. And I think about, like in the old days, let's say that this doesn't happen anymore. You might have a doctor who says, hey, you gotta get out and move your body. You need to lose 20 pounds. Go out and start walking tonight. Well, that doctor doesn't, probably hasn't had the time to be able to talk about, well, what neighborhood do you live in? Is it a safe neighborhood? Do you have money to buy shoes? Do you have children at home that need to be watched? Do you feel safe in just being outside? And so I think those just have to always be in the back of our minds and maybe in the front when we're starting to develop new things, whatever technology or whatever programming for wellness that we are doing.
I'd just say one thing that I'm often, triggered might not be too strong a word, by the land acknowledgements that we do on campus and whether they're sincere or not. So it seems to me to be rather beautiful when you're actually experiencing the land and to be validating and connecting to that sort of colonial past and the Treaty of Fort Meigs and all of that when you're actually in the space rather than you're in a room like this sort of surrounded by the accoutrements of the institution. So that if we carried that, message into sort of nature spaces and really connected with that shared heritage and sort of celebrated that the present power of that message, that I would find that more sincere than I often find the message we have today. So I think there are certain opportunities. Again, it probably comes down to what you said, Alex, about how we use it. But I think we could find a productive way to engage with some of those issues around NatureRx in the kinds of signage we have and the kind of things we invite people to think about as they experience nature.
This, I think, really ties into the prescription question as well. When we think about prescription and what are we instructing and what is the level of directiveness in that conversation. I remember I was working with clients out of the University of Chicago at one point, and again, see a lot of different, and we're in a different setting, so see a lot of different patients come through that hospital setting and talking about things like you were mentioning, what is your community like? What is your sense of safety? What is your time and resource like? Do you have time to do these things? What is your childcare access? And really having those conversations, I think, is crucial. And then understanding how do we prescribe, invite, or encourage. And reminds me again of this kind of value-based piece of, we're likely, when I think about my work, not going to encourage someone to go connect with nature if it's not something that they're really looking to do or is important to them. But we always can talk about, from an educational standpoint, different options and include it as an option, but really invite them to figure out what's going to be the best for them at this time.
Having so many thoughts, it's hard to funnel them. But maybe a starting point for the mess of thoughts that I'm having is why I got into social work specifically, why I chose that for moving forward with my career. Social work specifically looks at the interplay between the micro and the macro, what's happening with us in our individual lives and what's happening on broader scales, and how you can't really separate the two, especially when we're talking about mental health or when we're talking about justice. And so I think, again, trying to funnel these all together, I'll bring up this book too. I read this book earlier this year, Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet by Thich Nhat Hanh. One of the things that I took away from that book was how, on an individual level, our engagement with the environment propels us to broader action and can change broad systems that start within ourselves. Thinking about all of the people who have been historically, systematically disenfranchised from their connection to nature. I think that's everybody through the giant engine of colonialism. Starting small, starting with the invitations of how we start to break down that separation, refining ourselves as an animal of our connection to nature. We can start even with conversations with people who aren't ready to take the first step in other engagement. The question that Callie asked earlier, where in your family did this break down, this connection, can be a powerful conversation for folks. Any way to get us started and thinking about how in our individual lives we can connect with nature, I think, is an engagement with these broader systems of injustice.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to find a better place to leave it off than right there. So with that, thank you to our panelists. Thank you.
I'm starting to slow down. Yeah. Well, I think we're off. Monday? Okay, I believe so. Shoot your email. I might have to check my
In the middle.
Individual counseling services.
All right, we have one more short panel to finish the day, full of just a couple of students and myself. We're almost ready, and then we can get that final hour of sunlight because daylight savings unfortunately happened. Although I'm personally a fan. I get up early. This is a student panel full of two wonderful students that have been dear friends of Nature RX, Katie and myself. I met Kaylin, maybe April, through Katie, and she works at the Planet Blue Ambassador Program, whom are one of the sponsors of Nature RX, and she's wonderful. And then we met Anissa through a connection with a student group, ECO, on campus, ECO-UM. I've been the MC for the event, but I figure I'll go a little bit into my own detail, and maybe I'll sit down with my fellow students, and then they'll go into their background and how they got involved with Nature RX and our philosophy. So I'd say I was indoctrinated into the Nature RX philosophy when I was young. I grew up in Connecticut, Southwest Connecticut, and it's a very densely populated place, but full of quiet hills and wonderful towns. And I grew up 2 houses away from my maternal grandparents. We live in a nice little quiet cul-de-sac, and we would go to my grandma's house. She has an award-winning garden, and we would go and plant beans, and I would pick the beans with her, and I would get my hands dirty. And then I would bring the beans home to my mom, and she would cook them. And there was something so divine about knowing I grew these with my grandmother over months and months of care and watch and observation, and then we ate them, and they were yummy. And then I became an angsty teenager, and I think I kind of lost it. Got absorbed into high school life, and certainly had things to be joyful about, but nature just wasn't a priority in my life anymore. And around this time in my life, my mental health started degrading. And then college, I went to the University of Connecticut, and it was very exciting that first year. And then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, 3 quarters into my freshman year. It was a profoundly difficult time for me. I'm prone to panic, waves of heat, and it's not a comfortable experience. But being sent home, leaving my college campus, which was a place of, inherent stress and high energy, going back to kind of my roots and with my wonderful yard and my dog and my very supportive family, and both of my parents came out to the symposium, for which I'm so grateful. And I spent that summer kind of rekindling a relationship with nature and with Connecticut. I'm an avid Connecticut Yankee, and I love where I grew up. Once school started, I decided to RA on campus during the pandemic. I was a resident advisor, and it was a decision I don't regret, but still a very, very difficult decision. As RAs, we were responsible for enforcing COVID-19 restrictions on campus. Students were 1 to a dorm. It was heavily reduced. Students aren't always the most responsible people, and restrictions were broken. Then we went into various isolations, and it was probably my lowest point. But around the same time, I found UConn had a Nature RX program. Dr. Cynthia Jones found it 2019, just like at University of Michigan, they were kind of happening parallel. And the concept changed my life. Being able to add intention to the concept. And, you know, we've talked so much about how this idea is so inherent and human, and we know it. We're made of this. Our molecules were a mountain, or dinosaurs, or dinosaur poop, as Chris Headley pointed out to me. But there was something profound about drawing attention to that. Because before I went outside just as an escape, knowing I felt better subconsciously, and making it conscious drew in that awe, drew in that wonder, and drew in that like connection to earth and sustainability that drew me to apply for a master's degree at the University of Michigan. I'm so grateful in a way I've had bad mental health, because it's made me who I am today, and I'm someone who I really love myself, and I really love the people I've had the pleasure of meeting at Nature RX, across the university, and I have a great family. And I think I'll let Kaylin go next to share her experience.
Hi, my name is Kaylin. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at the University of Michigan, studying program in the environment with a specialization in business and sustainability. Similarly, I grew up in a very rural area outside of Battle Creek. So if you guys have ever had cereal, Kellogg's Post, from the cereal city. And so I grew up around factories and then also farmland. So I was constantly out at my grandparents', outside, outdoors, playing in the cornfields, and then thrown back into the city with all my family members that worked at factories. And I don't know if any of you know of the oil spill that happened, but I actually lived near, for that period of time, Kalamazoo River, when there was a huge oil spill. And so I think all of these things kind of growing up intrinsically like impacted my thought processes and stuff like that with the environment. So I always had this kind of special thought and attachment to making sure that we're sustainable and kind of not degrading our environment. And that kind of outgrew or grew throughout time as I entered high school. I had a great teacher who's now a master's student here at C's. So that's super cool. But he was my high school teacher. His name's Tim Muick, if you ever get the chance to reach out to him. But he taught a class, Global Climate Change, which was pioneered using the University of Michigan, which also impacted me to kind of make my decision to go here. And so I think finding my place here has always been kind of something I wanted to do growing up. But a lot of times talking to new students and stuff, you'll talk to them and they'll always say what things they're nervous about for college is finding that community on campus. And that happened to me once I kind of found people that were interested in sustainability and Nature RX. And I think I am in several different clubs and stuff on campus here, one of them being Eco-UM. But I also have jobs here on campus. And once I found my place kind of in sustainability and stuff here on campus, working as a peer advisor for PITE, which is a program in environment here on campus, and kind of talking to students, you kind of get this sense of commodity that there's a lot of people that are also interested in doing these things on campus. Working with Sam and stuff this summer, I got to learn a little bit more about Nature RX and got working with them to really see. I got to go on a nature walk. I had the opportunity to go with Katie and some people from Healthy. And that was when I kind of started being more intentional about my time outside. I know we talked a lot about the phones, and I think a lot of times it's harder as students really to put your phone away just because I have 3 jobs on campus and I'm in student orgs and have classes. And so when you're constantly doing things throughout the day, you're in classes, you're never really shutting down your phone because you have emails outside of class. You don't have that 9 to 5 work time where you can go home and kind of take a break. So I started being more intentional this summer and making sure that I was kind of taking time for myself, and I saw the impacts that that was having on me. Another thing I experienced with students on campus was this weekend I'm going on a retreat with my club. But last retreat, we all kind of spent time outdoors, away from the phones. There's no Wi-Fi in this place that we went to, and we just like played football and stuff like that outside. And everyone had a really positive outlook on that and kind of turned in and was like, wow, that was a lot of fun. We all connected coming back, and so now we're going to do that again all together and kind of go hiking and stuff like that. But you see, once it gets warmer outside, students flock to, the diag and looking for these communities. And so something I've been really passionate about in my work with Planet Blue Ambassadors and stuff like that, and meeting students throughout orientation and stuff, is to kind of make sure that they have spaces to do that. And so I think like NatureRx is doing a great job at ensuring like nature walks and stuff like this are able to happen, and students, staff, and faculty all kind of have a place to kind of experience this and kind of see how that goes.
Hi, my name's Anissa. I'm also a third-year student at the University of Michigan. I'm studying biomolecular science. And like Kaylin and Sam, I grew up in a pretty rural area. I live just outside of Ann Arbor. I live in Dexter. And so growing up, we have this like beautiful trail called the Border to Border that I always used to go on runs at with my dad, because he's really passionate about running. So he kind of forced me and my family into it, but now we all really enjoy it. And growing up also visiting like the northern part of Michigan and going on walks every night after dinner with like my entire family really impacted me. And so when I came to the University of Michigan, I wanted a piece of this in my life, but I didn't know where to find it. And so a lot of my first year was spent like looking for a place on campus to try and fit in, and I couldn't really find a place where I was getting this nature aspect that was really important to me until I, like on a whim, just applied to eco, and it's been really impactful for me because it's led me to meet so many other students who are passionate about different environmental issues and are so different from me in what they're studying that I can learn a lot from them and learn a lot from what we're doing at our meetings and even the retreat, like Kaylin was talking about. We spent a lot of time just connecting with each other and with nature outside, and I think that led me to really want to invest time and learn more about NatureRx, because I think it's so cool to be able to just go outside and have a lot of your problems kind of just drift away just by being outside and getting away from your schoolwork and your phone. And I really wanted to help show other students that it's possible as well.
Something that both of you touched upon, and I don't know the answer. I don't think anyone does, but I'll pick your brain anyway, is when do you know it's time to like take a nature break, unplug, go on one of these retreats? I most often do it when I know I've gone too far. For example, today. I desperately need a nature break this weekend. But when do you two feel like, oh, crap, I need to turn off my phone, hug a tree?
I think that is something I definitely struggle with, especially being so busy. And like staying on top of things is definitely hard. Procrastination, I know we've talked about, someone mentioned it earlier, but I think just like allotting time to kind of make space for yourself and kind of go on walks and stuff like that has been helpful for me. Another thing that kind of like has taught me is like when I start to become a little bit more overwhelmed, just like going and getting out like fresh air and stuff like that has been really helpful. Even if it's just like through the diag, like leaving Dana from like all my classes and stuff like that, and just really just putting stuff away and kind of, even if it's for 5 minutes, it's been helpful to kind of recharge in a sense that's a little bit quicker. And then obviously larger nature breaks are needed as well, like retreats and stuff, just little vacations for yourself. But finding out when is kind of hard when you're constantly busy. And sometimes I do it a little too late as well. But we talked about time blocking earlier, and I think that's something that's really important, is just kind of making sure you're taking time for yourself.
Yeah, like Kaylin's saying, I think it's really hard as a student or in any position where you're working a lot to kind of step away from what you're doing, especially if you get really kind of locked in to the work you're doing. it's really hard to step away and leave it behind, because it can be hard, especially for me, to come back to it later and get as engaged with it as I was before. But I think something that I like to do is whenever I'm walking outside, whether it be like from my car to a building or in between different classes, I try and put my phone in my backpack. I don't listen to any music, and I just kind of like walk and I people watch kind of, and I look at all my surroundings, and I use that time to connect with nature, which is definitely not long enough. And I think integrating longer breaks is really important as well. But I think just using the time that you're forced to be outside as a nature break is really beneficial.
And what would you say to get students who might not want to put their phone away? Or, during the research and practice panel, they were talking about how often, and I'm subject to this too, of putting in my earbuds and putting on often, some, at this time of year, maybe I'm close to Christmas music. But I don't know, that's wonderful and atypical. So I'm wondering, what you would say to someone to replicate that behavior?
I think just try it. This summer I was at every student orientation talking with students as they came into campus and talking about campus resources, more related to sustainability, but also plugging places like the ARB and places on campus that students may not necessarily know to utilize right away. For me, it took me until last year to go to Matai Botanical Gardens, and once I did, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I walked the trails for 4 hours. So I think making sure that students know these resources is available is really important, but also just being hey, just try it once, and I think you'll find that you like it. That was something with me, kind of going outside and stuff like that more. Not to go back to the retreat, but playing football. I had such a fun time going outside. I'm on a competitive intramural flag football team now. And I do that once a week and have practices and stuff with friends. So that's not something I ever saw myself doing, but it's a way that I found to allot time to get outside and to have fun with friends and kind of find more of a community here on campus. So trying new things is kind of always a good way to adapt to new habits and stuff like that. And behavioral change is hard unless you do make that step. So,
and I think for students, knowing the benefits of what they're doing is a really important factor in why you're doing something. So I think really teaching and just educating more people on the benefits of being outside and how that can help you procrastinate less or be able to focus more in different classes or just feel better overall physically and mentally. I think a lot more students would be willing to try it because I think now are very pessimistic and put school above everything else and other organizations, which are always good because you're meeting new people, but the work you're having to do just above everything else. So I think just spreading awareness of the benefits can be really beneficial for students to hear. And I know I personally always take those fun facts to heart and try to integrate them into my life. And again, like Kaylin was saying, just give it a shot because I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. Something you just said, Anissa, I think connects very well to kind of both of our last two panels. I think I'm a C student, so marketing the symposium to Cs was not hard, if you can imagine. There's a lot of people already sold on, the healing benefits of nature and the ecological benefits of sustainability on campus. But it's hard, there are certain disciplines on campus that feel much harder to break into, to integrate the Nature Rx philosophy into curriculum. We had two professors on the research and practice panel talk about how they've integrated kind of this philosophy into the programming of their classes, into the actual syllabi and assignments. To certain disciplines that might not be as flexible to include kind of assignments like go hug a tree for an hour, even though I think every class should require that. And I think Captain Newman would too. You know, how do you see faculty integrating Nature RX into syllabi, whether that's through assignments or through the, teacher-student relationship?
This one is a hard one that I think everyone's still kind of grappling with. I think one thing I've kind of learned throughout my roles and stuff like that is meeting people where they are. Especially with like sustainability and stuff, sometimes it's hard to capture everyone's attention or like push something immediately, I guess, for like what you're wanting them to be interested in. But kind of meeting people where they are and starting smaller also could be a great way to kind of integrate this into other programs. Like you were talking about, kind of just paying attention to things when you're going on walks in between places and stuff like that is a smaller way to go on a nature walk, but it's also effective. And so I think like finding ways to include those into programs around campus and what works for faculty and for their students and kind of building that up over time is a good way to kind of start integrating.
Yeah, I think like integrating things like that into like organizations, classes would be really tough for some specializations, but I think some that need it the most should definitely start doing little things like taking 10 minutes to write about like what you saw outside today, or which I know is hard because it doesn't follow the curriculum of any specific class, and that's why it would be difficult to integrate. But I think, like Kaylin was saying, starting at a level where people are already interested. So like starting with club sports or a like environmentally based organization, you can start integrating things like journaling for 10 minutes and then like sharing it at the beginning of a meeting, or like taking a picture of like cool things you saw in nature. Like I know a lot of people love like the squirrels in the diag. They're super cute. And so like showing those pictures and like showing what you're doing outside, or like especially right now the leaves on the trees are so pretty. And so sharing that around, and I think that can gain traction with other clubs because a lot of students share clubs. They're in like many different organizations around campus. So I think just having the idea start in a few places can really start like the spread of these ideas.
All right, I'm going to end with an off-script question, but I promise it's an easy one. I moved here like 18 months ago now. Like I said, I'm a Connecticut Yankee and a New England snob. I do love that my molecules are somewhere in the New England mountains. But I have learned so much about people, but so much about the Midwest and how a dynamic, complex, and wonderful, wonderful place it is. And I think leaving is going to be very, very hard, but I don't think about it because it's not here yet. So what are your favorite nature spots in Ann Arbor / the University of Michigan? Why? Did you have a really meaningful experience?
Yeah, so I think I have two really my favorite nature spots. One on campus would be the Arb. I know in the presentation earlier we saw the council ring, but I have given some nature walks to students and some staff and faculty for like the beginning of the year, and I really liked those areas because I think they are very beautiful, and it kind of gave me a different perspective, I guess, leading walks like that through those areas, because I not only got to like notice the things I was noticing, but also see other people engaging with nature, which was impactful for me and kind of just seeing how much of a difference that can make. But my favorite nature spot, currently, I live off campus, pretty far towards 94, but there's a pathway that goes from my apartment through like a back way. And there's never really anyone back there. And I kind of just followed it along to see where it would go. And with my friends, and we've started kind of going on walks and stuff like that through there. And so now, whenever I'm feeling a little overwhelmed or anything, I'll just kind of take that stroll. So I think kind of finding your own nature spot is important, and what you feel comfortable with can kind of become a place for you to kind of go and relax a little bit. But I highly recommend like a smaller loop in the Arb, like going down the stairs towards the river. There's a really cool river landing there. and then kind of cutting back up through like the council ring area is really nice.
Yeah, the ARB is definitely one of the best nature spots on campus. And I think the Diag too. But one underrated spot, I think, and I can't get up there enough, but is the Grove in between all the classroom buildings on North Campus is so beautiful. And they have all these lights hung up, and they turn on at night, so it's all lit up. And it looks like kind of almost out of a movie, like a rom-com almost. But I think it's so beautiful, and not enough students, especially on North Campus where they have like really hard curriculums they need to study all the time for the engineering students, don't get out into that area enough, especially because there's really not enough like workspaces, which is a different issue. But I think that spot is super beautiful. And I think also just anywhere kind of like off campus a little bit, like law library and past, there's all these like, it looks more like a residential area, and there's a lot of trees there. And especially right now with the leaves falling off the trees, it's so beautiful to just stroll along like by the houses, and you can see like all the pumpkins that are still on like porches, and like people decorating for like Thanksgiving and Christmas right now. And I think that's one of my favorite spots to walk by.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember a year ago, Chris Eagle talked about we were trying to finish and wrap up all the pictures in the NatureRx app. And I remember getting email blasts from Katie, and I was still new to the NatureRx project team, but like, it's pretty today! Go get pictures! We need these in the app! It's pretty now! Don't wait! It's a wonderful time of year. But thank you so much, Kaylin and Anissa. Can't thank you enough for helping NatureRx before this, during this, and continuing after the symposium.
Well, for being here.
All right, I'll just do some finishing words. And then you can... All right, you just have a few more words from me, and then you're free to go and enjoy the rest of this really beautiful day. I want to thank all of our speakers, all of our panelists, all of our lightning talks, everyone who asked a question, everyone who came, and just another round of applause for everyone. This has just been, months and months and months in the making for me. It feels very much like the start of something really exciting at the University of Michigan, and a great opportunity to recognize all the wonderful people doing amazing Nature for Health work. Having Captain Newman kick us off yesterday just lit a fire under me. She is a high energy, go, go, go woman who I'm so grateful to have to look to in our nation in the future. We live in a time of very high stress. High rates of burnout and isolation have made us feel disconnected from one another. And as we gathered like this, especially at lunch with the Glee Club singing to us, I was reminded, and I think Sarah Holliday also mentioned this, how much joy it is to just gather. And I try to be very purposeful about not taking that for granted in a post-COVID world that we live in. I think the number of brilliant speakers we've had today on all the panels and yesterday illustrated the necessity of implementing nature-based health practices and interventions across the university. We have wonderful partners in the hospital with the Department of Communications and Office of Patient Experience, working with patients to ease their pain and help them find joy and a path to recovery and wellness. We have partners in the Mathai Botanical Gardens and Nichols Arboretum who steward beautiful lands, working to redefine how we holistically look at these spaces with the NatureRx philosophy crucial to that. We have wonderful partners in the Office of Campus Sustainability, LSA, and Planet Blue Ambassador Program, advocating for the care of our amazing Mother Nature so future generations of Wolverines may bask in the campus's beauty while prioritizing a lens of justice, equity, and health. We have wonderful partners in recreational sports seeking to find joy in movement and adventure, and how these concepts improve our person and make us human. We have wonderful partners in information technology services, expanding the definition of what a school app can do and be, and allowing well-being and nature access to be guiding principles in their pedagogy. We have wonderful partners in the Arts Initiative looking to inspire creativity in people so that they may learn to take art in its many forms and that it's an avenue for joy and culture. So much of this work is already being done, and the symposium was brought to bring these people together and enhance these partnerships and elevate the discussion. I became convinced of the nature arts philosophy when I was at my lowest point, but also when I was a child. It was built into me young, and I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to be in the natural spaces of Connecticut and now Michigan. To harken back to Katie's messages this morning in her presentation on what ifs, what if students, staff, and faculty, any of us in this room, community members, learned from a young age like me that nature can heal? And what if it became explicit in our relationships, our parenting, our educating? I so believe in Nature RX. When you look to nature and you look to Michigan, incredible things happen. Thank you so much for coming. We will be having a survey email go out on Monday to get your opinions on the symposium, your feedback, and we'll also be offering some sessions in partnership with Adventure Leadership to continue these conversations, because not everyone got to ask all their questions today, and I'd love to hear them. So thank you so much.